Okay, welcome everyone. Just getting set up. We'll be underway with our live stream any moment now, so stand by and we will get things underway. Hope you're all doing well. Just while you're waiting, let me know whereabouts in the world you are tuning in from and what time of day it is there for you, so I can get a bit of a feel for what times work for live streams and so on. We will be getting underway in just one moment, folks. Please stand by. Welcome to everybody joining me on YouTube. Thank you for joining me. Please just in the chat there, just let us know whereabouts in the world you are and what time of day it is. And welcome to everyone joining me on Facebook. Great to see you all. Hey Yvonne, first person to comment today, well done. Welcome. Looks like everything is coming online now. So for those just joining me on Facebook and YouTube, let me know whereabouts in the world you are. Where in the world are you? And then we'll get underway. We'll just give people a moment to come online. Howdy, how you going? Good to see you all. We're going to be doing some acrylic painting today. Going to do a smaller subject, and we're going to do it a little bit faster than what we did the last live stream, which went over 2 live streams, and it's like about nearly 3 hours worth, and I probably talked too much in between. So today we'll do a bit more painting and see how we go. We'll do a fairly simple beginner sort of subject. Should be a bit of fun as always. Just waiting for people to come and join us. Misty Cotton Game, welcome. Fort Worth, Texas. I have sent out, I think you won the tote bag, so that's on its way. It's in the mail. Barbara, welcome, New Jersey. Awesome, 7:30 Monday night. Probably not a bad time in Texas, which probably means in New York, it's what, maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock, somewhere around there in the evening. So that might be a good time. I'm actually an hour and a half later than what I've been doing it because I had a doctor's appointment today and a few other errands. So that's why we're a bit late. But I thought we'll try this time anyway and see how it works. Laura Scott in Boise, Idaho, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And Beverly in Ontario, Canada, welcome. Had a whole lot of people, French-speaking people, contact our support today. I don't know what happened, but asking if we have it in French, but we don't yet. Maybe in the future, who knows? So Facebook's being very quiet, but welcome if you're just joining me on Facebook. And again, please tell us whereabouts you are. Now, we're going to have some giveaways today. I'll show you those in just one moment. First, though, I'm going to just give me 1 second. There's a fair bit of setup and moving parts in getting this live stream to work across multiple platforms. So we're streaming today to Facebook, YouTube and Twitch, and there's a fair bit involved in that actually. So stick around to the end today. We're going to do the painting and I'm going to answer your questions, but one lucky person is going to win the DVD. Now I haven't decided whether it's going to be Facebook or YouTube. So whoever comments first on one of those platforms and says pick us, somebody will win the DVD on that platform. And not to be outdone by that, our limited edition mouse mat, Learn to Paint Lab mouse mat. So the other channel will win that. If you're on Twitch, we need to grow our audience there, and then we'll do giveaways there. So whoever comments first, either on Facebook or YouTube, that platform will then be in the running for the DVD. So I'm going to ask you one question. Pick us, Barbara says. That's the first one I saw. So YouTube is going to win the DVD. And Facebook will win the mouse mat. So stick around to the end and I'll give you a question as we go. And if you answer the question correctly and you're the first one I see, then you will be a lucky winner. All right, everybody ready to get going? Facebook, you're awfully quiet. If you're watching on Facebook, let us know whereabouts you are. Okay, now what we're going to do today, I've got up on the board here a sheet of canvas, and I've just taped it down to the board. It's not very aesthetically pleasing, I realise that. However, I wanted to show you this because I had a question the other day from somebody asking if you can paint on canvas sheets torn out of a pad, which, you know, if you're learning, sure, why not? If you're going to sell them, I recommend going to the next step, which is to buy a big roller canvas. And then I've just cut this out. I think it's a 10 by 12 inch, and then I've taped it to my backboard, right? So yeah, they're not a problem. But if you're going to try and sell them and frame them and things like that, I wouldn't necessarily use the canvas pads. I think perhaps, unless you find a really good quality one, I would probably go to stretch canvas like I just showed you. Now, on the palette there, we're going to use today the interactive, the Artilia interactive paints, and I'm going to talk a little bit about those because I think they're a really good acrylic paint. Pretty sure they're available in most places in the world. So there's the French ultramarine blue, okay, made by Artilia, which is an Australian company, but I'm almost certain you can get them in most places in the world. And the reason why these are good is they paint like an oil paint. They're nice and viscous, nice and thick, and they also have the ability to be able to be rehydrated. And if you rehydrate them with a bit of water, then you can paint back into them, okay? So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go. I'm going to use basic palette, yellow ochre, French ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and we'll throw in a couple of booster colours as we go. So that should be good. And we're just going to make up a scene here today. Misty uses the pads a lot. Okay, good. Yep, they're great for practicing with and for having fun with the kids and things like that. My only comment is if you want to get it framed up, then perhaps using a roller stretch canvas or better quality canvas might be in your best interest if you're going to sell them and, you know, or you want to frame them. So just give that some, but as a practice, perfect, right? Now, I've got a little bucket of water here. I went and bought a whole lot of new brushes. This is what they look like before I get a hold of them. Now, people will ask me about sizes, right? So they'd all worn off on the other. So the big one here, it says it's a size 12 and it's Jazz Art. You probably can't get them in most places in the world, I don't know. Size 2 and 4 for the small ones. And what's that one? Size 8. So a range of sizes, basically, right? So I bought some new ones and we'll have a play with those. And what we're going to paint today, I've just been in my little sketchbook here. Perhaps if I spin that round so you can see it a bit better. Now it's upside down to me, but we're just going to do a really simple little little subject here, a little landscape subject, and this is, you know, really quite an easy painting to do, and you will find it's quite an enjoyable one to do as well. I don't know if my laptop's frozen or no, I think we're all good. Yeah, you'll find it quite an easy little project to do. And we're going to talk about composition a little bit today. So that's why we're talking about doing beginner level painting. We're going to have a big dark tree in here, and we have some darks across the foreground and then some recession into the background. So it's just going to be a little field type subject. Easy, anyone can do it. And we're going to use the Moore method of painting, okay? So I'm just going to pop that over there. The Moore method of painting, of course, is the 3 steps, 3 colours, 3 brushes. And I feel like I'm talking way too much. Let's get some paint out and let's get underway. Some big chunk of blue and a big chunk of the red. So if you haven't let us know yet, just let me know whereabouts you're dialing in from and whereabouts you're dialing in from and what time of day it is there. And the question for our winners, for our competition, our giveaway. You ready for the question now? If I give it to you now, I don't want you to answer it now. That's the thing. Maybe I'll hold off and give you the question. Okay. Where are we? Around about there. So there's our titanium white. So let's keep it really, really simple, right? 3 colours plus white. 3 colours plus white. Really, really simple. Anyone can do this. Let us rock and roll. Facebook, you are very quiet today. Nobody wants to talk to me on Facebook. That's a bit sad, hey? Maybe you'll warm up in time Put that over there. Okay. Whoop. Excuse me in the shot there. Sorry, I thought I'd actually have myself set up. All right, let us start off with a small brush. Get some water, we get some blue paint, we get some red paint. Switch those together. And what I'm thinking is I want to have a really nice big tree in here. Now, because we're doing this as beginner level, I'm not going to paint any particular type of tree, right? So you decide what type of tree you want to paint. I just want to, I'm more interested in getting shapes and how to create elements here that are going to have a realistic feel about them, right? So, g'day Martin, welcome, thanks for joining us. Yeah, that's what I'm more interested in, is not so much a particular type of tree at this stage. G'day Anne, welcome. You know, as you advance and progress, we'll get to different types of trees and so on. But for the moment, let's just focus in on getting some big shapes happening. And so we'll put a little foreground tree there as a little blocker. And getting edges and the overall shape right so that it looks like a tree. And we break out of that sort of unconscious programming that we all have. Hands up, you know, let me know yes in the comments if you've done this. You know, you go to paint an object like a tree and you do it like this. You go, there's a tree, right? We've all done that as we start out, as we're learning to paint. We get conditioned in kindergarten and primary school way too much. Okay, now I am going to do a field through here. That field is going to run sort of through there somewhere. And we are going to just run up some mountains in through there. Maybe we'll run that one down like so. It's a bit harsh, that one. We'll sort that out. Yeah, don't think I like that composition so much. So I'm talking to myself a bit here. Just run that one up that way a bit more. That's probably a bit more pleasing, like so. And then we'll put a really distant one in through the back there, and from there. So what we're doing right now, what I'm doing, and I'm largely just making this composition up, right? Which I encourage you to do, is just make up little compositions for yourself as little practices, right? The good thing about like using stretch canvas like this, or if you've seen my video on preparing boards with the MDF, is it doesn't cost much to do. And if it's sort of cheap to do, well, this is a couple of cents really when you work out the costs of, you know, the costs of getting stretch canvas like this. You're talking about a couple of dollars. Sorry, probably, you know, 5-10 cents for a sheet that size. Beaker Squeaker, this is acrylic. This is a beginner basic level acrylic painting demonstration, and we're using the Moore method of painting to demonstrate here today in acrylic. However, the way I use acrylic is very much like painting in oils, right? So if you learn the Moore method of painting and as it applies to acrylic, you can transfer that over quite easily to oils. And we've been teaching in water mixable oils, brilliant medium, highly recommend it, and you can do exactly the same process. Because I don't use many mediums, I only pretty much use water, it means it's transferable, okay? So, a simple little composition, isn't it? And that's step one of the Moore method of painting, is to plan out a few big shapes. Big dark here, we'll put a shadow across there. Got another little shape here of this tree. We've got a row of trees in the distance there, and then a couple of little hills and a sky, right? Anyone can do that. And this is what I really want to get across to you. If you follow the step-by-step methods and you simplify your palette down, you simplify your brushes, then guess what? Anyone can do right? Including you. If you're an absolute beginner, you can definitely learn to paint with what we show you at the Learn to Paint Academy. How much do you water them down? A fair bit, John. Oh, it depends on what stage we're up to, right? So I've just done a drawing, so I want that paint, the pigment in that paint there to be quite thin. I don't want too much pigment, so a fair bit of water. Now I'm going to do the block in. So I'm going to use a little bit less water, but enough so that the paint flows when I block in colour. And then when I come to step 3, I'm going to use virtually no water, except for when I'm doing fine details. Okay, so it depends on the stage that we're in of the painting process. And it's kind of difficult to teach exactly how much water, because different climates and things like that are going to affect it. Like I'm in a very, usually quite a humid climate here, coming into winter now, so it's not so much. So you have to sort of work that out based on your location and so on. Sorry about that. So if you have a look here on the palette, you can see that, you know, the paint's fairly thin there. There's a fair bit of water gone into that, okay? So I hope that answers your question, John. Okay, now, so our giveaway that we're going to do at the end of the stream here today, somebody on YouTube's going to win our DVD, which is our Tuscany Farmhouse DVD, right? So the first person to get the answer to the question right on YouTube will win that. And then on Facebook, we're going to give away our limited edition mouse mat. And the question is, but do not answer now, right? I'm only going to take the answers at the end when I call for them. But the question is going to be, name 3 things that create aerial perspective in a painting, or depth, okay? Depth or aerial perspective. Don't answer now, because I'm not going to take your answer now. No, John, it's a good question. Not each layer. Like this is almost dry now, right? So I don't stop at this point. However, I do usually stop after the block-in point, and which we're about to do now, right? So I do normally stop after the block-in and let it dry. However, you can keep working. Okay, so look, let's now thicken up that paint. We've got blue, we've got red. Okay, you can see that's a warm, dark. Okay, I'm going to add a little touch of yellow ochre to that. That'll push it more towards a black, or at least a dark grey. Okay, unless you put too much in, like I've just done there. See that? That's too much red and yellow in that now, and it's made it go brown. So what do you do about that? Well, you add back that third primary. You add back the blue. Okay, and that takes it now back towards a dark grey, and getting very close to a black. Okay. This is why I don't suggest you go out and buy black, even though there's times when you want to create greys and so on. You don't need to buy black. So I've got a question from Cheryl. What is the Moore technique? It's the Moore method of painting, which is 3 steps. When we're doing step number 2 right now. Okay. Step number 2 being the block-in. Step number 3 will be our highlights and details. It's 3 colours. So yeah, I've got the 3 primary colours here on our palette, but we do add booster colours. 80% of our painting will be done with these 3 colours though. And I use a limited number of brushes, 3 brushes. And what I recommend, if you want to learn more about the technique, I've got a free course for you. And all you need to do is go to www.learntopaint.info. I'll leave it on the screen there for a bit. Learntopaint.info, and just register for the course. It's free. It takes you through the Moore method, gives you, I think, 3 or 4 different painting demonstrations, and you can try them out. You can learn about the Moore method of painting and why I recommend a limited palette, limited brushes, and just a few steps, right? And we've taught 25,000 people around the world so far through the free courses and paid courses with this method. And what it does is it simplifies the process down for anyone who wants to learn to paint. So I hope that gives you a bit of an insight there, Cheryl, into what we're doing here today. Okay, so write that address down. I won't leave it up there for too much longer, but write that address down if you haven't already done so. Go and register for the free course. Now, Not entirely happy with the shape of that tree, but that's okay. We'll leave it there for now. And what I'll do is I'll just warm, so I've got this tone here that we've just mixed up for that tree. I don't want this little tree here to be the same. I'll warm it up just by adding the red, okay? So what I was saying before is I don't recommend to people that they go and buy black because you can mix a dark like I've just shown you. But the advantage of learning how to mix your own darks, of course, is you can then make those darks warmer or cooler, okay? So you can move them between, so that's a cooler dark there. This is a warmer dark. So it's just going to naturally come forward. Okay, and then what we are going to do is come back to this row of trees in the background here. That needs to be cooler. Okay, so we add more blue back in. And it needs to just lighten off in value a little. So I'll add a little touch of the white in there. And as you can see, I've added way too much because I'm talking and not concentrating. Okay, add more blue in there, add more red, add more yellow to grey it. Now you watch when I pop this row of trees up here. And remember that what we're trying to do with our blocking is we're really painting in the darks and setting up our values pattern, right? That's what we're really doing here. And I'm painting mostly in the shadows. So this is going to be the shadow side of these trees, and we need to come in and put a mid-tone and a highlight tone on them, right? Probably made them too big. I'll pull them back a bit. But you can see the temperature shift and the value shift in those, yeah? Hopefully. Okay, has everyone written down that address? I might pop it back up later on. Pop it back up later on. Okay, don't want you to be distracted by it for the moment though. So now we're going to do a row of these distant mountains, and mountains in a distance, they generally tend to be cool. So we're going to start off with a blue-grey, lighten it back ever so slightly to there, and needs to be a bit lighter and bit cooler. Okay. So looking at that, that tells me I've probably got that distant row of trees a little bit too light in value. Can you see that? Because I'm going to struggle now to get my mountains in at a light enough value without going almost white. So I want to have that row of mountains in the background there. I can separate those trees with the highlights and so on, but there's just not enough separation there for me from those middle distance trees. I hope you can all see that, what I'm looking at there, and why I think that might be an issue. Just let me know in the chat if you can. So what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to darken that a little bit. Okay. See that? More blue and red. So you can see that limited palette, we never have to wonder what colour. Let's just try that. So that's a bit darker there now. And that's going to make that mountain that we've just drawn in a little bit of sit back a bit more. And it's also made me realise what a terrible shape I've made that mountain. So we'll correct that. All right. You're all very quiet today. Maybe you're concentrating really hard. Let's just try that. Let me just raise that mountain up that way and then down through there, just to give it a bit of shape. Okay. You can see that I've just made that blue a bit more pronounced as well. And I'll angle that down that way. Okay, so there's enough separation now between those trees and that mountain that I'm happy with that, because I know I can put some highlights on those trees. The only issue with the trees now is, well, let me put that question to you. What do you think the issue with the trees is there? Let me know what you think. New colour's good, thanks Gladys, I think so. It's given that little bit of a pop of separation. This is how you make things have aerial perspective, right? It's about the values, it's about temperature, it's about the colour saturation, right? But what do you think's the issue that I see with this row of trees through here? Let me know what you think. To me, it's fairly obvious, but I think if I can ask you questions and get you to think about them and start to be able to pick up ways of improving your painting that way, then I think you'll have learnt something here today rather than just watched me do a pretty painting and jabber on for an hour. Okay. All right, now, I've got another 2 mountains there that's a little bit cramped, so what I'm thinking is I might just change that composition because otherwise it's going to end up a little bit too cramped. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just mix up a lighter, cooler tone and grayer, and we'll just run this one out. So changing that composition around, because I'm making this subject up, I feel that I can get away with that. Just make a little bit of a peak there. And I don't know, do we have any people on here watching today who appreciate Bob Ross, Bill Alexander style paintings? Do you follow any of his stuff on YouTube or any of the, I mean, there's a ton of people on YouTube who are doing that style, teaching that style. But do any of you watching now follow along with that sort of Bob Ross, Bill Alexander style? Let me know, because if you do, I'll try and turn that mountain a little bit into that type of style and show you how to do it in acrylics. Thanks, John. I really appreciate that. I don't know Maxfield Parrish, but I'll definitely look him up after today. Yeah, Matthew, I think that the size doesn't decrease as it comes closer to the path. Down in here, I'm not sure that it wants to decrease necessarily. Maybe I misunderstand what you mean. However, I think it's too uniform along the top. You can almost draw a line across, and I think what I need to do is just pop 1 or 2 up just to break up that line. That's what I'm thinking. Misty loves Maxfield Parrish. That's good. I'll have to check him out. But can you see now with this little... This one's probably a little bit too warm, but it's definitely sitting behind our first mountain. Oh, Misty, maybe you're saying you love Bob Ross. I'm not sure whether you're loving Bob Ross, me, or Maxfield Parrish. I hope you love me as well. You may have been responding to my Bob Ross question. Okay, we'll just work around that tree. And obviously the Moore method of painting is... it's a little bit different from the Bob Ross method because we start out with darks and we do a drawing, which the Bob Ross, Bill Alexander methodology doesn't do. However, you can easily create Bob Ross style paintings following our methodology. And that's why I was asking if anyone wants to turn that little mountain range there into a snow-capped mountain. I've only ever seen the snow once in my life. So... G'day, Joanne Reeves. Thank you very much for watching. Welcome. If you stick around to the end, I'll give you a web address where you can learn more about what we do. Misty was Bob Ross, okay, not me or Maxwell. That's fair enough. All right, we might do a little bit of snow-cap mountain peak pending the time later on. Okay, so our block-in's moving along. Now we've got the sky and we've got the field to do. I'll just give my brush a swish and let us go for a little bit of drama in the sky today. We'll get some big chunk of this white paint here, pop that there, and we'll get a bit of red. And let's have a play around with that. Now, we need to keep that value fairly light, right? So that it doesn't come too far forward compared with those mountains, okay? So I'll just pop a little bit of pink into the sky. Pink? What are you talking about, Rod? Have you lost your mind? Okay, get a bit of orangey yellow glow in there as well. I guess the way I like to paint is not really to literally copy subjects. So, you know, if I get a photo of a sunset, I'm not going to try and laboriously copy that. I tend to like to just be really loose with my interpretation of it. Well, they're so close in value, that pink and that orange, that it's difficult to distinguish between the two. However, there are ways that we can get around with that just by increasing the amount of that pink. Now, I'm not really sure where we're going to go with this, but let's just continue on this track. Just lightening it up as I get close to that mountain range there. Now, when you get good at this, you know, I can do the block in about 10 or 15 minutes. It is hard to imagine. I have not been to New Zealand. The only time I've seen snow, actually when I was a kid, we went to a place called, well, I don't even know what it was called, Lake Mountain maybe? No, it wasn't called that. It was in Victoria, Australia somewhere. And there was snow on the ground, just a little bit, a couple of patches. And it must have been the end of the snow season or something. And then as an adult, there's a place called Ballarat in Victoria. And I went up there to do some work one day. This is 10 or 15 years ago. Oh, no, maybe not quite. 7 or 8 years ago. And this stuff started falling out of the sky, and it was pretty damn cold. And that's the only time I've actually seen snow falling. My wife's from the UK, and been over there when it's been fairly cold, but not seen it fall. And I've been in New York when it's been bitterly cold, but no snow. Okay. A little bit of drama happening in that sky there now. And notice around these trees, it's fairly dry. I'm just going to smudge some edges in there, and I'm not going to fuss about that just now. Just get a bit of colour in there. Very true, John, very true. Painting doesn't have to make anyone but the painter happy. I think you're 100% right there. Very true. I'm starting to wonder whether anybody on Facebook is listening to me, because nobody's talking to me over there. That's okay. It's okay. Maybe you've all got me on, but you're busy doing other things, which I know what that's like. I do that myself. Okay. Blur these edges. You don't want these edges to be too harsh in the distance there, unless it's your main subject, and then maybe you make those edges a bit more in focus. Okay. So, we've got our darkest darks in the foreground here, and we've got our lighter values in the background. So that's one way of getting depth in a painting. We've also got warmer tones here in the foreground, and then progressively, as we step back, we go cooler. And we've got more saturated, this is just blue, the blue and the red, with an emphasis on the red. That's greyed off, so the saturation's reduced, and that's another way of getting aerial perspective into your painting. G'day Colleen, how are you? Welcome, welcome. Edith's been trying to find out how to order our kit. Edith, I'm not entirely sure what kit you're referring to. However, you can register for a free course at the address on the screen there. We don't have a painting kit in terms of brushes and paints and things right now. We plan to release them in the near future, but not right now. 76 inches of snow, Dave, I cannot imagine that. Dick, there is no kit that I'm aware of. There is a free online course at www.learntopaint.info on the screen right now. Okay. All right. Let us get some red and some yellow. Mix that together and turn it into a reddy orange. Okay, reddy orange. And we'll get a fair bit of water into this so it's fairly loose, like ink. Okay, and let me just put this in as a earth tone in here. And the reason why I'm using red is because, what will I take? I'll take that bit of white there. Mix that in there. The reason why I'm using a red underpainting for the field, because remember this is going to be about a little bit of a field here in the distance with the mountains and so on. Why am I using red then in a field? Is a question that I get often. And it's because I'm going to paint the field with green grasses. And red is a complement of green. So it makes a nice underpainting. Okay, a little bit of grass. All right, making good progress. Gladys is mesmerised by your technique and concentrating. Good, Gladys. Watch every move I make. It's just a process that I've developed, you know, and when you understand how the process works, the birthstone flower kit, Edith, I think you're on the wrong live stream. I don't think we have a birthstone flower kit that I know of, so you might be thinking of someone else, but that's okay. Yeah, when you learn how to move through the 3 steps and the 3 colours and using a limited number of brushes and so on, you can pretty much, and you understand how to break a subject down into big shapes. For instance, the other day on our Learn to Paint TV this week, we did the Noosa boats, right? And most beginners that I've found that I've taught in classes, when they look at a subject like this one, they become a little bit overwhelmed with information. There's too much info there, right? They've got boats and grass and sand and trees and, you know, how do you simplify it right down and take the essence out of that photo or that subject? When you learn those sort of things, life becomes a lot easier, you know, and then you've got a bit of a process to follow. One thing I'm having to get used to is how I mix some, and then when it is applied, it seems to be a different colour. It does take experience, John. Keep in mind that acrylics will dry a little bit darker. Okay, so that might be part of the challenge. But you know, mixing paint takes practice and experience and understanding the fundamentals and just doing it enough until it becomes intuitive. And that's how you move from beginner to intermediate stage. Matthew, I used the red as an underpainting in my second to last painting. Per my instructions, turned out pretty cool. So thanks for that tip. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, if you just put green down, it becomes a bit flat and boring. Just getting green down. A lot of people have trouble mixing greens and how to get their greens vibrant in a painting without looking artificial. And so if you're doing landscape painting, they've got to be a little bit muted, but to get them to really have vibrancy, underpainting them with red, because red's the complement of green, right? If you think about green, it's primarily blue and yellow. So you've got 2 of the primary colours. Red's the complement, it's the 3rd primary. So laying green over a red makes the greens just buzz a little bit and have a bit more vibrancy. Cool bananas. All right. We have got to a point now where I'm pretty much going to pause for a few minutes and just let the water just dry out of this a little bit. So here's your opportunity to ask me anything. Ask me a question. What's your biggest pressing question about painting right now? Because I just finished step 2. And there's a little bit of water. It's a little bit wet. It's a little bit too wet right now just to go straight back into it. I mean, I could do it, but it would require a little bit more concentration, which makes it challenging to interact with you while I'm doing it. So if I chat with you for the next 10 minutes or so, this will dry off and then we'll be ready to go. So what questions can I answer for you? What do you want to know? Is there a course you teach on fundamentals of colour? Kathy, there is a course that we teach on that. It's our colour mixing course, which is magnificently named. And it's all about the fundamentals of colour and how to mix colour. Why I use a basic primary colour palette for landscape, and then one for more vibrant colours like abstracts. It teaches you how to mix them, teaches you all about values, saturation, and you go through different exercises of creating colour charts and colour wheels, and it pretty much gives you everything you need to know in the beginner to intermediate stage of learning to paint. So it's our colour mixing course, and you will find it at the Learn to Paint Academy, right? So it's www.learntopaint.academy, and you'll see it there on the front page there, hopefully. And yeah, absolutely we do. Absolutely. Because I think it's a fundamental skill for beginners, learning how to mix colour. So yes, the answer to your question is yes. Yes, yes. All right. Facebook are very, very quiet. There's something going on over at Facebook today. Let me know if you've got any other questions. You can see that's still wet. It's not too bad. I could probably work back into it, but it is definitely wet right now. And some of the other areas are a bit wetter still. Do you find that a certain brand darkens less as it dries, or is it pretty much universal? I think they're getting better. The Artilia Interactive doesn't seem to be as bad, Matthew. But to be honest, once I started using the Artilia Interactive, I haven't used any other brands for a couple of years, so I'm a little bit behind on what the other brands are doing and so on. And the other thing is, I sort of got so used to working with that factor that I've stopped thinking about it. So the degree of darkness that this will dry to is fairly minimal with the Artilia Interactive, but I couldn't answer for other brands. I know I'm being a bit vague there, so I do apologise. John, can you use hairdryer? Yeah, you can, and there's plenty of YouTube artists out there who teach in acrylics, and you'll see them get the hairdryer and dry it off, and that's perfectly fine. My only comment, and the reason why I don't do it, is I do think it flattens the paint out. It can damage the pigment in the paint, and perfectly fine if you're doing a little practice painting or a demo. If you want to go on and sell it, which is, you know, part of what we teach at the Learn to Paint Academy is start as a beginner, move to intermediate, move to advanced, and then, you know, maybe on to professional. And we have courses that cover that range. And if you get in the habit of using a hairdryer, then it's probably not the best practice for selling paintings down the track, because it does damage the pigmentation, as far as I know. Now, I'm not an expert, and there might be other opinions out there, right? I find that if I let it dry naturally, that it seems to be a little bit more vigorous. I don't know, what's the word? Has more punch, the colour stays stronger. I don't know what the word is. And there's people out there probably have opinions on this, but I don't use a hairdryer, yeah. Cheryl's asked, do you mostly use greyish and reddish tones in all your seconds? Pretty much. So when I'm doing landscape, yeah, absolutely. Because what a lot of people don't get about the landscape is that most of the colours are muted. You know, unless you've got a really bright sunny day, and there's higher saturation in the colours. But generally, the biggest mistake with landscape painting that I see with beginners is they paint their colours a little bit too bright. Now, that's okay if that's the look you're going for, but really, realistically, the landscape is reasonably muted and greyed off, especially if you've got any distance or depth in the paintings. So, so yes, mostly. So I'm usually in step 2 of the block-in, I'm setting up a value structure so we can create depth in the painting. And a value structure, you know, sort of lends itself to greying off in the distance. Good question though, good question. All right. We are now, might just move on. Good questions, folks, thank you. Let's have a look here. I kind of like that bright sort of sun setting over the back of the mountain range there, and I think we'll leave that. Try and find my flat palette knife. God, I tried tidying up and made things worse. I do have my Bob Ross, but I tend to use it as a scraper to scrape things off the pallet more these days. And there's one that might work. So we'll get a little bit of white, take a little bit of this orange tone in here. Find a bit of paper towel. Get rid of all of that. Okay, so with palette knife, I don't know, you guys use a palette knife? Kind of contemplating the idea of doing a whole project or a whole course on palette knives, but the key is to make sure your palette knife surface is clean and then just go and scrape off a ribbon of paint like so. Okay, so flatten it out on the palette like that and just take a little ribbon of it. Whatever you've got on the tool, the brush or the palette knife, is absolutely, John, please do that. Whatever's on the brush or the palette knife is what is going to end up, surprisingly, on the canvas, on the subject. Okay. Just put a little tiny little bit of a snowy cat peak there, won't overdo it. I have trouble painting snow because, as we established before, my experience with it is limited. I can tell you all about the sun and the beach, but can't tell you a lot about snow or skiing and so on. But we'll just pop a little indication of it there. So it's very easy to do Bob Ross style snowy mountain scenes using acrylic paint. G'day 8-Track. Not sure if I said g'day to you or not. There you go, there's that link from John. Have to go and check out that artist after the show. Don't all race off now and check it out though. Okay, so yeah, it is very possible to do sort of Bob Rossi style paintings. You don't need magic white and things. I mean, part of the reason why they had those products and special palette knives and so on because, you know, it was a good way of selling art supplies. And don't get me wrong, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. They were very clever and they helped, you know, millions of people, which I admire. And they also gave me the inspiration to start my own TV show. So, but I think probably the one thing that's missing a little bit is they don't teach about values and colour mixing so much. Bill Alexander a little bit, he used to focus in on how to create light, you know, by having contrast with the darks and so on. That used to be part of his and I don't know if you guys know this, but I actually became a certified teacher of the Bill Alexander method. As far as I know, I've not heard of anyone else in Australia. I could be wrong, but haven't met anyone else in Australia or heard of anyone else. But of course, I could be completely wrong with that. But I quickly found it was a difficult subject. We couldn't get magic white, or they wouldn't ship it to us, one of the two. And that's when I started to morph it into something that made a bit more sense to me, because I felt that learning about values and composition and so on, colour mixing, were pretty important. Okay, so what I'm doing there is just adding a little bit of dark and a little bit of light, and that's how you get that sort of three-dimensional look. A little bit of a snowy peak there. Okay, that's enough of that. Back to the beach. Now, Matthew, no, I use a knife quite a lot. Let me show you. In fact, we are about to do a brand new course, which is going to be released later this week. I'll show you this. And it's going to be called Looser, Bolder, and More Expressive. And part of it's going to be acrylic paint. And this is what we're going to be using, right? Scrapers, large palette knives. Absolutely, you can use palette knives with acrylic. But you may have noticed that it was getting a bit thin there because you need to use plenty of paint. That's the key, right? Plenty of paint if you're going to use it with acrylics. But it can create some fantastic effects. All right. They're too much the same size and height. Are you referring to the trees there, Joanne, or are you referring to the palette knife? No, you must be referring to the trees, I guess. I'll just soften some of that in. Now, here's the thing with acrylics. It's getting tacky, sticky, right? Because I haven't allowed it to dry fully. And that's a mistake, especially when you just sort of early stage of your painting journey. You'll struggle with tacky acrylic paint. I'll push on because I kind of know how to work around it. But usually after step 2 of the Moore method, usually I'll go and have a coffee break so that it fully dries off. Oh, I'm getting a cramp in my foot. Okay. Just run a little bit of this path out here. I'll come back in and fix that up with a brush, but just to get a bit of a feel for where that path's going to go, we'll just pop in a bit of paint there. And let's get cracking. I had said I was going to try and keep this to an hour. I think we might be going a little touch. Trees are too dark, are they? Okay. Well, I imagine you're talking about the distant ones here, which we're about to start working on. So we get a bit of blue, get a bit of this yellow ochre, mix that together to get a olivey green. Get a touch of white into that just to lighten it back a bit. That's not quite right. A little bit more yellow ochre in there. Okay, now this is, when you come to doing little highlights and things, this is what we need to do, is not have too much paint on the brush. Okay, I've got too much paint on the brush. Now, in the block-in stage, not a problem. In this stage, just a little tip of the paint on the edge of the brush there. Okay, and let's just... Now, this is a small painting, so I'm not going to detail up this much at all. We're just going to work in a little bit. Now, I've got that shadow tone is a little bit on the purple side, and the green works really nice with the purple. Okay. Just shape up little tree shapes, and I'll just make this one a little bit taller because of what we were talking about before. Where's a little purpley tone? Maybe that just there. It's going to be the wrong dark, but hey, that's not quite it. Just experiment a little bit. I just want to get a little bit more dark into that one there. Okay. So again, I'm not going to try and create any particular type of tree here. Have a go at a little composition like this, and if you want to spend time making alpine trees or maple trees or whatever, feel free. I'm just really, when you're starting out beginning, it's about the shapes more than anything, the edges and the shapes, okay? If you can get those edges looking more tree-like, then that's really the first thing you need to focus in on. Joanne, what I recommend is, what I'm doing here today is doing a beginner little painting, right? And we are doing it using what I call the Moore method of painting. It's a 3-step process, and it's 3 colours, 3 brushes, and it's the easiest way for beginners to learn. And if you're just starting out, you can register for a free course, which you'll see on the screen, learntopaint.info. And that goes into more detail about the Moore method of painting and the palette, and we do 3 or 4 projects. So anyone listening in who, if this is your first time joining us, write that address down, and after the show, go and register, get yourself locked in for the free course, and learn a little bit more, because what we've done, we've helped 25,000 students now learn how to paint. Every day I get emails because from people thanking me, because it simplifies the process right down, and it makes it easy and understandable for beginners to go, oh, now I know what I need to do next, as opposed to being overwhelmed by the whole process, right? So I invite anybody who's listening in, come and register for the course and learn a little bit more about our process, because our process isn't what's normally taught to beginners. And you know, I've made reference to Bob Ross and Bill Alexander here, and the way they teach beginners is really good, except that if you give anyone who's been taught, you know, with their methodology, a photo of a subject and ask them to paint it, if it's not one that they've seen Bob Ross and that do, then they're going to struggle with it. So we teach in a way that you can learn. That's not a criticism of those guys. I think they've inspired and helped millions of people, me being one of them, right? So it's not a criticism. I just think that evolution and developing it further. Thank you, Pat. Glad you're enjoying it. And Yvonne, Caroline, the snow looks real. It is real. It's a real acrylic mountain done for you live. It's snowing outside. Well, there you go. And there are mountains all around me. Oh, how fantastic. Take a photo and send it through. As I was explaining to others, or explaining earlier, I don't really have much experience with snow. Mostly sunshine and beaches and so on. G'day, John. Welcome, mate, in Taiwan. Welcome back. Good to see you. And where are we up to? Yeah, I think most people, John and Joanne, you know, when you watch me for the very first time, you think, what on earth is this guy doing? Can be a bit confusing. And thank you, Matthew, for answering 8-Track's question. It is Artilia Interactive, which is an Australian brand. However, you should be able to get it at Dick Blick and your major online retailers and so on. Or Amazon. You'll get it at Amazon. All right, let's have a bit of fun. I'm going to speed up, because from here in, the process is the same, right? I'm going to reverse, well, not reverse, I'm going to use darker, more saturated, warmer colours for the trees because they're closer to us. Before I do that, I just want to fix up this shadow. And remember, at the end, we have our prize giveaway. Somebody on YouTube is going to win a DVD. And if you get the question right, the answer to the question right, somebody on Facebook is going to win a limited edition in high demand mouse mat. It's not really in high demand, but it sounds good. And the question is, what are 3 keys to creating aerial perspective in your painting? Don't answer now, because your answer will not be taken into consideration if you answer now. Wait until the end. Because the other day when we were doing a live stream, everyone started answering straight away. Enthusiastic. All right. Good. Now, what I'm going to do, this is the point now where I'm going to introduce booster colours. So 80% of our painting is being done with our 3 colours, 3 basic colours. Now I'm going to come in here and go, well, we need a bit of punch. So that's cadmium yellow light, I don't mind whether it's cadmium yellow light or cadmium yellow regular. Doesn't matter to me. Yeah, I'm the same, John. I quite enjoy watching Bob Ross and Bill Alexander. Bill Alexander, I think, is entertaining for his own reasons. And Bob Ross, you know, I think those guys do a great job. But I just think that they didn't take the methodology far enough to teach about values, saturation, colour mixing, and so on. Which is what we're trying to do in the Moore method. Because I think they're the fundamental skills, you know. The quicker, as a beginner, the quicker you can learn the fundamentals of colour mixing, values, composition, big shapes, edges, all type of things that I'm always talking about. The quicker you can learn those, the quicker you can stop thinking about them and just do it unconsciously. You know, it moves from your conscious mind to your unconscious, and that's when you can free yourself up. Okay, and really just explore more artistic approach to painting. Okay, which is what our looser, bolder, more expressive course is going to be all about. So I'm just working on, I was going to call this a mid-tone, but it's fairly bright. It's probably a bit too bright for it to be a mid-tone, but have a look at the way that pushes that alpine mountain, the snow-capped mountain, way off into the distance as soon as I put that warmer tone there. And the reason is, warm tones come forward, and cooler tones go into the back. Now notice I'm not really trying to paint leaves and branches and twigs and things. All I'm doing is just scrubbing the edge of that big brush. That's all I'm doing. Now, as a beginner, you just want to get nice little random edges on your trees. When you come to a bit more advanced and you want to say paint a realistic looking gum tree, sure, there's more to it. But when you're starting out, keep it simple. Okay, now I'm deliberately putting the same mid-tone everywhere. That's probably not technically accurate. Probably not technically accurate, right? It should be probably a little bit darker on this side, a little bit lighter on that side, perhaps, but I'm okay with that. A little bit of lighter toning around the edges here. Got that nice bit of sky now coming through the foliage. It's going to get back into our dark. Cool it down, a little bit more blue into it, and it's going to darken it back up. I can push those darks back up into the foliage as well if I've painted out too much of the darks. Okay. And overlapping edges are important. Okay, so the question we're going to ask at the end, and I'm getting close to the end here, folks. Question to win the prize. What are three of the elements or the components of creating greater depth in your painting? And I've mentioned them all. Don't answer now. Okay. How about we brighten up, or we just make this more of a orangey tone in the foreground here, just to really exaggerate the idea of warm colours coming forward. So we'll just make that tree a little reddy bush. It's probably a little bit large, but one of the challenges of doing painting demonstrations like this is, you may or may not be aware, but I sort of stand to one side, which kind of makes it challenging. Less is more. Misty watches Bob Ross on Netflix every night. Hope you don't fall asleep on the couch there, Misty. with those soothing tones that Bob had. Now we're just going to do a happy little tree. Painting for beginners, welcome. Welcome, welcome. All right, enjoying this. Kay, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Tracy. I can see the comments here on Facebook. Well, maybe some of them. Maybe I'm missing some because there hasn't been many comments that have been showing here. Tracy, maybe I've missed some, so apologies if I have. Yvonne, your teaching of colour mixing is very useful. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to help. John, he greeted me. Yeah, I'm seeing comments on Facebook here. G'day, John Regan. Haven't seen you around for a while, mate. I remember you used to get on the Robert Hagen live streams. All right, let's get in some green for the fields. So now we're going to come up with a little slightly punchier green. Add some yellow into that. Add a little pinhead of the white. And just a little bit of red just to grey it back. Okay, let's just test. That's not too bad. Now the key here is not to lose all of that underpainting. That's the key with all of it really. Is just lay it over the top and allow some of that red to come through. Okay. Need to just break up that colour. It's all a bit too much the same, so I'll add a little, I'll just darken it a little bit. Just add in a couple of little marks in like so. And just with a dry brush, I'll just take a tiniest little edge, just that edge there, right? Hope you can see that over where the palette camera is. Just that little bit of the edge, right? So you only want like 3 or 4 hairs and just flick up. I did it before without explaining it, but if you just flick it up against that dark, then you get the little feel of little tufts of grass around the base of those trees. How easy is that? How easy is that? Thanks, Nan. Good on you. Thanks for watching again. Martin, do I ever use tempera? No. I eat tempeh, but I don't use tempera for painting with. There's just so many, there's so much, you know, and I've kind of just stuck with the oil paints initially and then acrylics. I started out with watercolour, but oil paints and acrylics mostly because I wanted to really master it rather than bouncing around. Nothing wrong with bouncing around, but you know, I wanted to really just hone in on and solidify my understanding of mediums. So I think once I feel that I've done that, I will perhaps venture into other mediums. I want to get back to watercolour. I used to have a full head of hair. Now don't laugh, but I had a luscious head of hair that would have made many men proud. Then I took up watercolour and lost all my hair in the process. Pulled my hair out trying to learn how to paint watercolour, and that was in the early days when I first started. Okay, all right, let's move along here a bit more. Flick up some grasses over those shadows there. Pop a little bit out over that path. I'll just get a smaller brush and we'll tidy up that path, and then, you know, it's a pretty simple little painting, but I think we'll leave it there. So get ready for our giveaway question. Get ready to type in your answer. I'll run that path over there. Just break up that shadow a little bit there. So look, the way we've done this, it's been a fairly simplistic little approach. Kept it as simple as we can without trying to get into too much detail and overcomplicating it. I wanted to demonstrate today how anyone could come in and just make up a little painting scene. That's a bit muck. Let me just fix that. Just make up from your imagination a little painting scene. Sketch it out on your sketchbook and then do what I've done now. Just have a little play around with it. Get back into a bit more dark in there. So I'm now working very wet into very wet, right? It becomes a little bit more challenging. Not impossible with acrylics, but best avoid it if you can. All right, we're going to wrap this up. We'll just flick in a few colours into that bush. Overlap them with that distant row of trees to create a little bit more depth, because we know that warm colours come forward, cool colours go back. It's one of your concepts of creating aerial perspective. Values, darker colours come forward, hence the darks here. Lighter colours go back. It's another one. Saturation, right? Colour saturation, grey tones in the back, highly saturated out of the tube tones in the foreground. All good, useful things to know. All right, last little, because I can't help myself. Just can't help myself. Yeah, I'm not concentrating. So they're a little bit rough, but touch of a fence post there. And let's just get into some of this here. So usually when I'm coming in to do like tree trunks and things, I'm just really picking up stuff off the palette here now. I want a muted little light tone. And I'm just running a few. Now because I've just made this tree up, it's not any particular type of tree. Okay, it's my tree in my world. And as a result of that, I can pretty much do whatever I want with it. So I can put in a lighter trunk like that, soften it out a little bit so it disappears into the shadows. And there you go, folks. A fun little acrylic demo for you. Miriam's late again. Sorry, my bad. Good to see you though, Miriam. Good to see you. Pat, thank you. That's a quick little demo, right? And most important thing is it's a process with a more method of painting. It's easy to follow. Anyone can do it. Have a go at it, you know, like just play around with ideas you make up and have a go. Misty, very relaxing. That's, I think you're probably referring to Bob. John, I'm on YouTube and not seeing comments from Facebook. John, you wouldn't see Facebook's comments if you're on YouTube, so they'd be on Facebook only. We're live streaming to Facebook, YouTube and Twitch at the moment, and so there's comments coming in on different platforms there. Dick, thank you, enjoyed it. Even the pink in the sky was so simple, but it works. Yeah, it's just basically our yellow and our red off our palette, right? But it just gives it a nice little glow. And look, if I was going to take more time, these little highlights could have a touch of pink in them, right? And that would just tie it all in together. But because we've only used 3 colours for 90% of the painting, there's a colour harmony there, right? It all works well together. Thanks, Helga. I'm glad you think it looks amazing. Thank you. Dick, thank you. Dave, thanks, Rod. Looks good. See you next time. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for joining us. Helga, I love the mountain. Would love to see you painting some waterfall. It is so easy. Helga, if you want to see a waterfall painting, I did one of the Obi Obi Valley waterfall, and you'll find that on Learn to Paint TV or on our YouTube channel. It's about 5 to 10 episodes back. We did a really great looking waterfall from one of the photos that I took. Peter, no problem, mate. Good to see you. But we are just about to wrap up. Next broadcast. So for anybody, I'm going to set up a web page where it'll have all the dates and times of up and coming broadcasts. The next one will be Thursday morning, my time, Brisbane, 9 a.m. Okay, Brisbane. That's Australian Eastern Standard Time, Brisbane. So if you look up Brisbane, 9 a.m. I'll be broadcasting live again, and then on the Friday morning at 9 a.m. we'll do our coffee chat and Q&A, which I enjoy doing that. We'll be talking about other, historical artists and so on, and answering your questions. So, but there will be, within the next week or two, I'll set up a web page and it'll have all the info there on up and coming broadcasts and so on, so you can tune in and know what we're doing. We've only just got ourselves set up, Dick, with our live studio to enable us to have multiple cameras and to be able to, broadcast to different platforms and so on. So look out for the next one. It'll be Thursday morning, 9 a.m. my time in Queensland. Okay, now, if you haven't done so already, register for the free course, www.learntopaint.info, okay? Learn to Paint info. And if you're on YouTube, this is your chance now to win our DVD. Learn to Paint DVD. It's Tuscany Farmhouse. It's a little scene that we did a couple of years ago. And I'll ship this to the first person to tell me 3 keys to creating aerial perspective. So it comes a little card there with the painting on it. And you can win this right now if you're on YouTube. 3 keys to aerial perspective. First person I see to type that in will win this DVD, right? So there's that. And if you're on Facebook today, Facebook right now, you win a limited edition mouse mat. Learn to Paint mouse mat, so you can stare at my ugly mug every time you use your mouse. So first person on Facebook will win that. And let me have a look here. Helga, thank you. I will find them. We'll see them all. You are great. Thank you, Helga. Appreciate that. Hope you join us. Register for our free course. Misty, you've already won. I should have had a qualifier here that if you've already won a prize, then I think to be fair to everyone else, that we'll rotate it round, and maybe in a few months we'll allow people who've already won to win another one. So the first person after Misty is Gladys. Colour, value or tone. Oh no, Gladys, no. Well, technically yes, but I didn't cover it. I'll give it to you, right? Detail, I didn't actually talk about detail, but you're right. Less detail in the distance, more detail in the foreground is definitely one of the keys to aerial perspective. So I will give it to you. Good pickup. I do mention it in other videos and things like that. Matthew, value, overlapping shapes, yeah. You're pretty accurate there too, Matthew. Is it right? Value, temperature and saturation, yes, absolutely. They are 3 of the main keys. Yep, absolutely. So who did we say? Gladys. So Gladys, if you're on our Facebook page, then go to the Facebook page, Learn to Paint Academy. Now, a few people went to my Rodmore art one. I don't check the messages there, right? So go to the Learn to Paint Academy Facebook page. If you haven't liked it already, like the page, and then you can message me your postal address details. Do not go to the Rodmore art one because I hardly ever check my inbox there. Okay. John, yep, you got it right. Okay, so now Facebook. Who's going to win our mouse mat on Facebook? Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks, Nan. Kay, thank you. Tracy, love Q&A. Laugh out loud. I'm not sure whether that means you do love Q&A or you don't. But we're going to do Friday morning coffee with Rod and we're going to answer questions, so check that out. Caroline, parallel lines coverage to vanishing point on horizon. That's not one that we've covered in this session today, and it's not what we teach. You're probably technically correct, but we're teaching beginners here, and that's probably getting a little bit too advanced for beginners. So I think your other... Well, look, in your 0.3, you've got less value contrast, lighter values, less color saturation, cooler tones. I'll give it to you, Carolyn, because you've encapsulated within 0.3 the answers I was looking for. So, Carolyn, if you're on our Facebook page, Learn to Paint Academy, message me your postal address details, and I'll send that out to you, the mouse mat. Thanks, John. Yvonne, you are correct, but too slow. Thanks, Tracy. All right, we're going to wrap that up. Go and check out learntopaint.info to register for the free course if you haven't already done so. And I will see you hopefully Thursday morning, 9 a.m. my time, Brisbane time. So you'll need to convert that to whatever time you're on. And hope to see you on Thursday morning. We'll do another little acrylic painting like this, just a beginner, basic just getting the right shapes and values and colours in and just having a bit of fun, right? Thank you all very much for joining me. See you next time on Learn to Paint Live.